myself out.
I am afraid of...
I'm terrified and paralyzed by...
I am deathly afraid of...
Welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast with your host, me, Ryan Perrio. Hello, and welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Perrio. This week, my guest is comedian Chase Myska. Chase is a comic out of the Arkansas area, most notably Fort Smith. He's done mostly the Grove and Little Rock Looney Bins. He's just burgeoning out in the Arkansas scene, so it's really great to talk to him. In this episode, we talk about his comedy, being a dad, how he met his wife, and then we get into his fear of not being liked. It's a real interesting conversation. I hope you enjoy it. So let's get into the interview right now with Chase Myska. All right, my guest this week is comedian Chase Myska out of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Chase, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
How does your daughter feel about you, like, raiding her closet? Does she know?
She doesn't know. When she finds out, I think she'll appreciate it. As long as it has to do with comedy, she thinks it's cool.
Okay, so she's...
If it has to do with architecture, she'd be like, get out of that closet.
How old is she?
She's 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want her to open the closet, like, without knowing you're in there, and just see you and, like, freak out. And
For those listening, I'm currently in my daughter's closet because it has the least amount of echoes.
It's the best place to cry is the best place to not be heard or seen from.
Yeah.
So you're based out of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Now, how long have you been doing stand-up?
I've been doing stand-up for 2.5 years. One of those years was during a pandemic. Okay. So I'd say 1.5 years.
Okay. Did you do a lot of Zoom shows during the pandemic? Were you one of the people that...
No, I had no interest in that. I very much do comedy for me, and I wouldn't get anything out of it.
Okay. Fair enough. I didn't like it either because I was like, I don't want to ruin... I was always just afraid that it would ruin my timing and my, like, room feel. Like, when you do comedy, there's like a feeling you can get from a crowd, like, okay, that's where, you can kind of maybe pick up and go with another material, and it's authentic. You get laughs, okay, you're doing well, you're getting, I guess people are getting you. I just feel like in Zoom that you're not hearing those laughs and just going to nothing.
Yeah. I have had the same concerns. So okay. I understand.
So what has been the highlight of your stand-up career so far? Like, what's been like the crown jewel so far of your comedy career that...
Oh man. When Dusty Slade told me I was funny, that made my whole day. I haven't had a headliner actually listen to my material, let alone comment on it. So that was amazing.
Yeah, nothing feels better than validation. And sometimes, just having somebody that maybe you look up to or has way more skin in the game is always like a nice. It's a something that you kind of just drive home and just reflect on, and you're like, oh wow, it's not something you brag to your friends about, but it's something like, oh man, that was, you just kind of. It's a good memory.
No, I definitely brag to my friends about it. I still brag about it.
Okay.
I'll take that to the grave.
Okay. So have you worked the Looney Bins, or are you?
I work at the Grove Comedy Club.
Okay.
In Lowell, and get a lot of the same comics that'll come through.
Yeah, Grove is an awesome place as well. Like I've worked there a few times, and it's a fun room. I haven't worked it recently. With the pandemic and stuff, I know Bill's probably backlogged on people that he had booked during that whole time that have, reached out and like, hey, I know the things are lifted there. I'm still, quarantined here. If I could, do a weekend. So I totally get that aspect of it. And so hopefully I'll get back there here in a little bit. But at this point, we'll see. And so, it's one of those things where,
I'll put in a word for you.
okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So who have you worked with at the Grove? Like, who are some of the headliners that you've had, I guess, did you work with
Yeah,
Dusty?
I worked with, Dusty Slade, worked with Aaron Weber, Greg Warren, and Carmen Morales.
Awesome.
And those are I've only hosted 4 shows there. I was scheduled for another one, but I wasn't able to make it. Yeah.
That happens. I mean, it's
COVID.
yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you just, as long as you're upfront and honest about that stuff, that's the best thing you can be. Don't be one of those people that last minute, if it's something, if you work it out Monday and then Tuesday you realize you can't make it, message them as soon as you can on Tuesday. Give them as much time to locate a replacement as they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you work at the Grove regularly. So are you closer to the Grove than you are Little Rock, or is?
Yes. Yeah. The Grove for me is an hour and 15-minute drive. Little Rock is like 2.5 hours. If I want to do a show in Little Rock, I have to spend the night.
Okay.
And I'd prefer not to do that.
I can't argue with that there, but
there's expenses, time. It's just a lot. It's a much larger commitment, and I'm not opposed to it. But if I have the opportunity, I'm gonna drive to the Grove instead.
Okay. So, how does your family, like, you have a daughter, 13-year-old daughter? How has your family like embraced that you're doing stand up?
So my 13-year-old thinks it's awesome. When she talks to her friends, she doesn't tell them about my career, which I'm a project manager at an architect firm. She doesn't mention that at all. She tells them I'm a comedian. And my wife tells people I'm a project manager and doesn't mention comedy. No, she does. She supports me. But I have a family. So I have 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wife. And the reality of being a professional comic is to be on the road and to be away from your family.
Yeah.
A lot of times. And I've had to reel back and hold back on what I maybe thought I would want to do,
Mm-hmm.
because of realizing what I truly want is to have a family.
Yeah.
So I just keep maintaining relationships with headliners that come through the Grove, keep working on material. And then eventually, once all my kids graduate and we have the freedom to travel, then I'd like to pursue touring comedy.
Congrats. Well, and you just keep a balanced life. Like, I've been doing it 16 years, and I've kind of just done it around the DFW area. Just like the last couple of years, I've able to venture out. I got, work at the Looney Bins and stuff. So I've gone through them now a couple times, as well as the Grove. So it's definitely like, you just have to do work and life balance. It's one of those things,
right,
where, especially with kids and stuff, now you've got, sports possibilities and.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, as a kid, I was involved in everything, and that's kind of what helped form and shape my personality. And then all my kids were involved with those things as well.
So, how would you classify your comedy? If you were to try to tell people, like, is it self-deprecating, edgy?
It can be self-deprecating. I don't go edgy. I have some jokes that have some misdirection that are kind of edgy, but they don't fall on the lines of like offensive.
Okay,
if that makes sense. So I'll tackle subjects that maybe are edgy, but in a way that's not offensive. But I'm a joke writer mainly. That is what I do. Is I tell jokes and sometimes stories. I wish I was a better storyteller, because I could do one bit in 20 minutes. That'd be fantastic.
But see, that, I think, to me, storytelling isn't really storytelling. You're just finding jokes and grouping them together into a situation. Like, you're just going through the situation and finding the funny in that whole situation.
That's true.
And so I have a little bit of a mix of both, and it's just, to me, it was just cobbling together certain situations and then putting them all together into this one long bit, rather than a bit that's, a whole story. Like, so to me, I think people that do that are just putting pieces of that story, finding, either breaking that story down into 5 sections and just joke, running those 5 sections at open mic and just like, okay, let me get this part good, then the next part, and they just iron it out to where when they cobble it together, it's 20 minutes of greatness. Like one of my favorite is Kyle Kinane, and he has a bit that's 14 minutes long that is just so funny, and it's like, man, I can't imagine doing a bit that's 16 seconds. Sorry, something fell in the background outside. And
No worries. You're good. I was thinking it's somewhere in this closet. I don't know.
yeah, it was just a plastic thing that fell outside. So I was like, okay, it's windy here. So we've had freezing weather, and I'm basically putting my plants back outside and doing work with that. And
Same. Well, yeah. But I understand what you're saying with the storytelling. I like when my son was born. He's 10 months old, but I have 10 days after he was born, I got up and talked about his birth. And while I'm in the hospital, I'm taking notes of little things that happen and little jokes that I've made throughout the time. And that I put those together to form the story of his birth, which ended up being like 5 minutes of material, which like 2.5 of it I use now.
Okay, well, congrats. That's awesome. It's amazing, that you're able to refine it and not just try to preserve it at 5 and be like, okay, to be able to edit like that, to say, it started as 5, but now it's 2.5, that's doing the work and finding, okay, so, not all of this is going to make Final Cut. Like it's like making a movie, and it's like, okay, well, unfortunately some of these scenes don't need to be here.
Yeah. It's tough because some of them are some of the things that I like the most, but the audience doesn't. those are the hard ones to let go.
Yeah, and I always say just repurpose. Don't let go of bits. Just repurpose. Put it aside. Okay, maybe I'm just not at a place comedically or mentally where I can look at this and find what I'm wanting to say. Come back to it a year or two later, and you're wiser in the game. You've got more comedy experience. You've gotten stronger as a writer. Maybe you can find some. Oh, you know what? Let me take this out of it. Because I like that. A lot of my stuff is just old stuff that I keep going back to, and I'm like, okay, can't find it yet. Okay, come back to it, and I just keep all my notebooks and I'll run through them as I write new stuff. I'm like, okay. If I get stuck writing new stuff, I'll look at the old stuff and be like, okay, since it's already kind of fabricated out, how can I make this better, or how can I reuse this? And that usually helps me like open back up from writer's block, because I'm working on something that's already halfway done. I'm not having to cobble something. I'm not having to fathom something from scratch. I already have the main idea. Think about it. Okay, what can we do with this idea? What are the... And maybe one time I'll look at it from the angle of this makes me angry. Next time I'm like, why am I afraid of this? I just try to go through different feelings about that topic, and just that way I can write maybe 5 or 6 different bits, because I just go through 5 or 6 different emotions. Like, what about this is embarrassing? What about this is sad? What about this is, that I feel like I could win, but I'm not. Just different ways. Because that way you're not having to write everything. And so that's usually my advice.
Really good, useful way to use material that I know there's something there, right? Or I know that there's something there, but you're right. I just haven't figured out exactly what that is, and I haven't come at it from every angle yet.
Yeah, and you just have to be passionate about it. A lot of people here in Dallas, like their pitfall is they just write something because they think it's a funny topic, and I'm like, but you have to be passionate about it. If you just think, oh, this is funny, I'm gonna say it, that's fine, but you gotta have some skin in the game. An audience doesn't care about your point of view. They want to know why this is important for them to listen to it. And if you don't give them that early, then they're going to just not pay attention to you later. They're just going to tune you out. And that's why I try to stress is like, sell me on this. If you're up there, talk about it. You're in a room full of people. and this is what you want to talk about, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you had 5 minutes of the world watching you, what would you want? How would you get them to watch you? Do you think they're just going to watch you just because you said it, or you've got to hook them?
Yeah.
So
I was I saw that you were in Wichita.
yes, I was about to bring that up. I was like, so doing the Looney Bins takes me to scenic locations like Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Little Rock, and Wichita, Kansas, which I was just there in January, like the first weekend of January when it was cold. And I mean, like, it was cold, like my feet were getting cold in my car while I was driving. That's how cold. Like, it was like my floorboard was getting cold because it was like 9 degrees.
Yeah. So you had made a post that you were working with, maybe it was John Little?
It was Vince Morris.
Vince Morris.
I work with Vince Morris in Wichita and Oklahoma City the next week.
Okay. Well, no, this is a post. You said you're working in Hyenas, but
okay.
I like, I can't believe they have him working the door. Like, which maybe is a joke that would be better off with somebody that I knew more personally than.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It probably came off as being rude. I was only trying to be funny, but you're like, well, that's kind of shady for someone. I just met your mother-in-law, and I was like, oh. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, so you got to a show in Wichita? And she said, how'd you know? I said, Ryan Perio told me. She said, who's that? He's the comic that you just went to see. And she goes, oh, that's crazy. I wonder how he knew. Like, you obviously told him.
Yeah.
Debbie, there's no way he just guessed. I think this might be Chase's mother-in-law.
Yeah, she just said, my son-in-law does stand-up. And I was like, oh. And I was
she claims she's like, I never told him that. I'm like, you had to have told him.
I can tell you exactly where I was too, because I was watching the Cowboy game over on the right-hand side where they do the open mic in front of the front windows, and she came to that bathroom that's by the ticket booth, and as she was going in there, she told me, my son-in-law does stand-up. Tell him he talks about, like, I'm his crazy mother-in-law. Like, apparently you have bits about her that she's.
She thinks I don't have bits about her. She thinks I do. I haven't yet. I'm sure I will. I'm sure with time I will.
She was
I haven't figured out how to make them funny yet.
Yeah, she has some like Eskimo coat on too, and I was like, she looked like you look like the crazy mother-in-law. You're owning that persona. I'm sure we all appreciate the fact that you were taking ownership of that personality.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. She is a whole lot of fun. So a lot of energy.
So how did you meet your wife? Like, how did that?
So my wife and I are both really into music, and we both went to music festivals for a long time, followed a lot of different bands. And there's a music venue in Fayetteville, Arkansas, that's called George's, and there's a concert there, and we met each other there through mutual friends. And she was actually on a date with another guy when I met her. I didn't know that till later.
So you were the side chick at this festival.
So when we met, it was only just to like, hey, it's nice to meet you. I've been wanting to meet you. I've heard good things about you. And then later we messaged and met up. But I didn't know at the time when we met. Yeah, she was actually on a date with somebody else.
Okay, Mr. Steal Your Girl. There you go.
Yeah, I didn't know. I swear.
Well, and sometimes that's like that. I mean, sometimes people are there. Like, I feel like you wanting to be at that festival may have been more something that she would be more interested in pursuing than maybe some guy that she, said, hey, do you want to go to this? And he was like, what is it? Like that.
Yeah.
Your level of I guess knowledge in that sphere probably was something she wanted to hang out with. Like, oh, this guy knows the bands and like we can talk about music.
Yeah,
the guy.
I will say a huge part of our relationship has been our interest in music and traveling. Where like a great foundation of our relationship is going to visit different places,
mm-hmm.
checking out different music, and having a baby in COVID really made us like meet each other again. Like really get to know each other in other ways because we didn't have that thing that we could just bond over.
Yeah. So what is the band that you guys, I guess, what is your favorite bands that that y'all share? What is the one band that like?
Right now, the band that we love is Goose.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually went and saw them in Dallas a couple months ago. Hi-Fi. I think they changed the name of the venue, but it was called Hi-Fi when we booked it.
Okay. So one of my friends does a lot of stand-up and music podcasts. His podcast is called I'm a Fan of. He's Travis Wright. Like, he does a lot of local artists and musicians. We used to have a radio station here called The Edge, and they would debut like obscure, like local and obscure music that maybe the radio station wouldn't play you. And it was called Edge Club. And I was like, that's what you kind of remind me of, is you kind of play, you have these up and coming musicians or people that are, just maybe breaking through. Like, he recorded during the pandemic, he recorded Brave Little Howl like in a cabin. And then he released it on vinyl. He's like, because this is just, he's like, when I listened to the recording, I was like, this is something that you would play on a record on a cold day or something, just to play around in the house. He's like, but I had to listen to it like over and over and kind of picture myself, like, where would I listen? How would I listen to this? And he's like, he just said vinyl was the way I went. And it's really cool. He's like he's a big music head and stuff like that. So I will recommend him. He doesn't like to do Zoom. So next time you're in Dallas, I'll have him interview you.
Yeah.
And y'all can talk music and comedy, because he is.
I absolutely love vinyl too. I think there's no better way to listen to music than vinyl. And it's not the sound quality. I'm not an audiophile in that way, but it is a physical item, and you have to sit down and listen to the album front to back, and you have to be present for it. It's not something you can just push play and walk around your house or get work done. Like, you're there, embracing the moment. It's a very zen way to listen to music.
Yeah, it's definitely, to me, I'm even though you would multitask, because I usually try to write in that space. When I get to that kind of zen moment, I'm like, okay, I can picture, different ways. I can go different angles. I can attack this subject. If I have like comedy, like I'll listen to comedy and stuff while I drive. I'll listen to stand-ups, short clips and stuff on like Pandora, Spotify, just to get myself kind of in that mindset of, let's ask questions, not just watch and zone out. Let's ask questions. Let's get the mind working.
Yeah, that's a good way to use that space. I'll be honest. I'm terrible. I have really bad work ethic when it comes to writing. What I will do is be inspired around 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. when I want to be sleeping, and then I will roll over and type it on my phone of these premises, and then later I'll come back and fill it in and actually write jokes. But that seems to be the way I work. It's working.
Yeah,
it's consistently working. But I don't think it could work that way forever if I had to put together a special or anything like that.
Well, I think it's work the way you can, and because you have, like me, have a job, we have the benefit of turning off comedy for 8 hours a day if we needed to do our job.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, you kind of think like, man, I wish I could be doing stand up and full time, but I couldn't imagine, there's some things about it that like make me like panic. Like if I was doing stand up full time, like how do I spend my 8 hours? What's my 8 hours of comedy day like? That's the part that like.
Yeah, I would have to spend that time with myself.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. And spend that time with yourself. Like, okay, now I've got to get on social media and try to, how many likes am I getting? What's this clip look like? And all that.
I already get enough anyway.
Yeah, but it just gets overwhelming. It's like, I couldn't imagine doing that. And I kind of, even though I, sometimes I'm bummed of having a day job, it keeps me centered because I don't have to, okay, what comedy work do I need to do today? Like how much comedy work do I need? How many joke writing things do I need to do? How much stage time can I get today? Like where can I get stage time? Like how much gas can I, it just becomes so much more panic when I'm like, okay, well, for 8 hours, I've got to work on tech support stuff. And I don't have time. If I have time for stand up, I'll think of something, scribble it down, and move on.
Yeah.
And tech
I
support.
have a friend, Steph Bright. Do you know Steph Bright?
I do not.
She's a comic. Okay, she's a comic out of Northwest Arkansas, and she's touring, doing comedy. And I saw just out of nowhere, she had this tour put together, and it was like 20, 30 dates. And then after a tour, she came back. I saw her at an open mic. I'm like, how did you do it? How did you organize that many dates in a row that are within traveling distance? Like, that seems like, to me, that just seems like everything just has to fall into place. And she's like, honestly, just plan it week by week and make it happen. Like, there's plenty of venues all over the country. You can go anywhere.
Yeah, I need to get better at that. I need to get better at like saying, "Hey, venue, why don't you book me?" I don't know how to do that. Like, I just luck of the draw did that with the Looney Bins, and I just happened to message them on a week they had a fallout, and he put me in Oklahoma City, and I did so well that they just passed me. And so I'm like,
perfect.
Yeah, I'm like, that's awesome, but it's like, now how does the rest of them work? Do I just luck of the draw with all like 800 of the rest of the comedy clubs in the United States? Just,
Yeah.
And I've started local. Like, I've tried to go to, like Loonies in Colorado Springs, Stand Up KC, and stuff like that are just past the Looney Bins. Like, it's okay. Let me expand my area, like Louisiana.
Do you ever work in Houston?
I have not yet.
I think Houston has a pretty good scene there as well.
Yeah. I need to get back down there at some point. I think it's just they have the Houston Improv and not many other, like, and the Secret Group are the only two places.
Yeah, the Secret Group is what I know.
Yeah, so I've done the Secret Group one time, and that was, it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. And
like audience-wise, you just didn't get a good turnout?
It was just my family. That was very...
Okay.
And it wasn't...
Do you have family from Houston, or did they drive there from Dallas?
They live in Houston. It's my dad's side of the family. But
okay.
The whole show, it was just my dad and that side of the family instead of... And it was just... And the room could seat more, but it just did... No one came. And I was...
That's hard.
Yeah,
That's really hard.
I was mortified just because I'm like, okay, this is how bad, this is like this is like the absolute, like, worst.
Yeah, this is the form.
This is what real comedy feels like. But by the time I went up, because I was headlining that night, I guess Secret Group had another show come on later, which was it's an LGBTQ show, like Don't Tell or something. Like, it's something like some kind of game show that they do comedy wise.
Okay.
And it's really cool. It was a really cool venue. It was something like, I guess just being able as a LGBTQ or any kind of person to unload what's going on. And so they were all kind of filed in to do that show. So by the time I went up, there was like 30 or 40 people in the room, not just my family.
Okay.
And it made it way easier to perform instead of just, hey guys, that are just here to see me, like,
hey Uncle Dave.
Yeah. And so it was like 5 people, and I was like, I just felt for both sides, because I'm like, I wish more people were here so you could see how good I could really do.
Right, because you're like, the audience's reaction is also a display for your family. Like, it's not like you're wanting to show them how other people are reacting to you. You don't. I'm like, I'm not truly concerned about your reaction, because if you don't like it and the whole audience does, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I need you to hear that they're laughing.
Like, my mom lived in DFW for a while, and so she saw me like being really good and stuff. So she saw me like at Hyenas and stuff. So she's come to a few shows at Hyenas where I was opening and middling, and she was like, that's way more easier to say ta-da, like to show how good I am. But when a room full of 5 people, it's very hard to say, yeah, this is what I do all the time. This is, I believe I'm good at it. And they just,
yeah.
But it turned out pretty well. I'd love to do, like some, another venue or something down there and have like my whole dad's side of the family show up.
Texas is pretty cool. You've got a lot of cities, a lot of venues to work just within the state.
Yeah.
Arkansas is pretty limited. We have the Grove and Little Rock.
Yeah.
Here in Fort Smith, we have like brewery shows that we put together. Yeah, they aren't clubs. They're breweries, and we can get 40 people in there and sell it out. That's a good time, but not the same experience.
So when would you, I guess, since you have a 10-month-old, that kind of puts traveling on ice for a little bit.
Yeah.
When do you feel like you would be, I guess, conducive to like working a weekend that would require you to be away from home?
Yeah. So the time that I would be okay with that is anytime my wife says it's okay. Honestly, I'm okay with it, but it's a lot to leave her for a weekend to take care of her.
Yeah.
So, and it comes with the trade of like, she needs to have her own time where she can go enjoy her friends and do her thing without having to be responsible. Because when it comes down to it, she does see it as work, doing comedy as work, but the work of having to take care of a baby by yourself for a weekend is a lot harder than the work of doing comedy.
Yes.
The reality is. So
what is her passion? Like, what is her...
Numbers. She's an accountant. She's a financial analyst for planners.
Okay.
And she runs a plant here in Fort Smith. And she's a genius when it comes to business decisions, numbers. We have everything we have because of her great mind. And she's very passionate about that. So with that also comes checks and balances and understandings of planning ahead. I'm not very good at planning ahead. I'm very what's the word? Impulsive. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm very impulsive. She's very responsible.
So, but what is her like, I guess, hobby? Like, what does she like to do that when you're taking care of the baby, what is her stand-up comedy?
Oh yeah, tacos and tequila. Love it.
Yeah, next time y'all come to Dallas, I can suggest some taco places that y'all might want to delve into and just enjoy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that sounds great.
It's very interesting because you can tell what your fear is just by the way you answer questions. Like it's very prevalent. Like you're very conscious of other people when you answer. You're very conscious of what would my wife say? What would my daughter like? It's so tell people what you're afraid of.
My fear is that people don't or won't like me,
and that's. I feel like that's the driving force of everybody doing stand-up because that is such a part of who you are on stage because it's like you're trying to present the best version of yourself in the worst situations.
Yeah, that's a really good way to describe that. I haven't really thought of it in those exact words, but that's a really good way to put it.
Like you want to be everyone's buddy. That's the whole...
Please. Yeah, for sure. It's like it can manifest itself in different anxieties and behaviors. Like if I went on a date with before I was married, obviously, but if I went on a date with somebody,
you'd be very not like when you came back home. Your fear of not being liked would be a reality.
Oh man! Very quickly fix that. But okay, if I went on a date with somebody and I knew that I had a good time, and I messaged them the next day and just said, "Hey, I had a good time," and they don't respond, like I could very easily go into a spiral of like, oh my god, even knowing that we enjoyed each other's company, knowing that it was a good time, I could allow myself to freak out thinking they don't like me, and and every minute that passes, the anxiety gets worse. So that's a terrible flaw because it's really debilitating when I could just as easily say, "They probably like me or don't," and it doesn't matter because we still had a good time.
So I have a comic buddy. We just did this yesterday with him, and he was talking about like he was on a date with some girl, and her cat didn't like him, and he said he would the bit I want him to work on. He said I drove home thinking, what could I have done differently with this cat to make it like me, and it just
I love
made me laugh so hard because it was like you that's how that's how messed up we are. Is like how could I have gotten this animal to like me?
that. It just brought the catnip.
But it was just so funny that this cat, because the girl was like, I don't fit. My cat doesn't seem to like you. I think you need to leave, or it's not jiving. And so, but it just made me laugh so hard that he's like, because it's like it's just a funny, relatable thing of what could I have done with this cat to make it like me? What did I do? Just that's how like sometimes paranoid people get about things.
But it's great too because it's a cat. Like cats, they pick and choose who they like pretty quickly, and they stick to it. There's nothing you can do about that.
So how do you handle this as a dad? Because that's especially as a daughter. Oh, I mean, you're lucky that she loves stand up, but I mean,
Yeah. So, well, okay. So here's another part of that is I'm divorced. So my daughter's from a previous marriage,
okay,
and that it's not just that like I want her to like me, right? It's that I only get her every other weekend, and I want those 48 hours. I mean, that's the reality of it is 48 hours. I want those to be in pleasant memories for her.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of times where my wife now will be like, hey, maybe you still got to be her parent. You can't just be her best friend.
yeah.
And that's hard. And I am still a parent. I still have to punish her, but man, it is very tough to do.
Do you coordinate with your I guess your ex or her mom on the punishment and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I have to because she'll be sneaky about it. If she's in trouble one place, she'll try to get out of being grounded here.
Just
She's
say,
13.
hey, want to hang? Like all of a sudden, she magically wants to hang out.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to coordinate that. Which is difficult, but we do our best.
How close is she to you? Like, is she in Fort Smith as well, or?
Yeah. She lives right here in town.
Okay, so that's not too bad. So it's not something that she's traveling or.
No, I mean that's the reason why I am. I probably wouldn't still be living here if she didn't live here.
Okay. Or your wife was like an accountant and making big bucks.
So anyway, that my wife can do anything she wants to do.
Yeah. So and yet your son too, like you're in that, there's going to be, another opinion coming,
Oh yeah.
I mean, he loves you now. I mean, you pick him up and toss him around. He think you're the greatest. That's all he wants.
Yeah, he looks just like me. So, obviously I love him. He looks just like me, so it's very hard to tell him no.
But I mean,
luckily there's a lot of reasons to.
Yeah, but he still hasn't gotten to that, challenging phase of, hey, let me challenge your authority.
No.
And that's part of it. That's a stretch as a dad too, because again, you have to separate friend and foe. I love you, but I've gotta stop you here.
Yeah, my goal is just to make you a decent person who survived. So just let me do that. Yeah.
And then you got Mrs. and the wife too. That's sometimes things it's hard too because especially if there's something that she wants to do and something doesn't work out where you can't do it and you have to be try to comfort, but at the same time not. That's the hard part for me as somebody that when I care is because I try to help and try to fix, and a lot of times all they want to hear is I'm sorry, and
that's definitely a problem with us, right? I'm so focused on solutions. Like she's like, I'm not asking you to fix this. I just want you to be compassionate about what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm there. This is my
That's a big
this
problem.
this is my compassion right here is me solving this. So you don't have to.
Exactly.
I don't want you to feel this way again. That's what I'm trying to. That's my compassion, and it's so hard
Yeah,
sometimes. It's so hard to just be like, oof, and just you're right. That's awful.
that's very insightful. I should work on that.
Which is part of it, but it's part of like I don't want you to carry this. It comes from that same thing, that same fear of not being like that. Oh, I did something that made you angry, and you want me to feel compassionate for your side, or all I can think is how can I fix this so it doesn't happen?
Yeah.
How can I make it right? And sometimes there's just not a way to make it right. It's just you just have to be like I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I hopefully
Yeah, a lot of my solutions though are also like ways where I get what I want to. Uh, so it's not always just like so you get what you want. It's like so you get what you want and I get what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like a great plan, doesn't it?
Yeah, until she sees that the underlying meaning is that I'm just trying to get what I want.
Yeah, then that is a long silent night at that point.
Yeah. I know what your motivation is.
So where do you think this like stems from? Like this overarching fear, like that it's something happened to you like as a young kid or like school? Because
yeah, I was thinking. So leading up to this podcast, I've tried to put a lot of thought into that. I don't think there's any like one thing that happened that made me like fear being liked. It's just like I've always put a lot of emphasis on the opinions of others.
Mhm.
I've always wanted to be liked or popular in some regard, and I've never not been. But
Yeah.
like I've got a pretty good record though, and I'd like to maintain that.
Yeah, to me, it's a lot of my stuff stems from school because like you see the same people year after year. It's not like at a job where you maybe see them for 2 years and then they move on. I'm like, these are
Right.
people that you spend 12 to 15 years with every day, and there's no HR, so they're learning on the fly, and everybody's like stepping on each other to try to reach the top of the popularity heap.
Yeah.
And everybody looks to the other person and sees how can I push you down and then also get higher up. And so it's a lot of people just pushing each other down at all times, and it just becomes what these phobias and stuff that we have is because of that, learning those social dynamics.
Yeah, I was never like the most popular kid in school, but as far as like quarterback or whatever, that guy. But I was the guy that was very fluid and could hang out with anybody.
Yeah.
I could be friends with anybody, and pretty much got along with everybody, except for those I didn't like. For the people I don't like, I don't care if they don't like me. That's
Yeah.
But if I don't know you, then I really need you to like.
I like how it's just people. It's like almost like a first impression. Like I have to show you I'm great. Like you.
Yeah. It very much translates to comedy. You're right. That is a big driving factor there.
So how do you handle this? So a lot of times when you're meeting people, that where you get the anxiety of what if I say something that what if they're not into music and I just go off on a tangent about music because they have somebody playing in the background and you're like Christian Bale. Huey Lewis in the news.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure that there are times where I've been just overbearing in conversation. I've definitely done that. Usually on a mixture of intoxicants where I tend to do that. But sober, I'm pretty good about flow of conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the missus help you with that? Like if she feels like you've talked too long, does she like?
Yeah.
She has subtle ways of like she'll give you a look or something like wrap it up. and like maybe give you like a light of like a comedy light, if you will. Like you got 2 minutes, wrap it up.
Then I also have my like Larry David moments where I'm like, what am I doing? What? I'm just talking. What?
That's in like I said, but it's such an interesting dynamic, like because it's like the first, that feeling is the first 5 minutes of introducing me walking on stage and doing my first joke. That's when I feel that same like phobia. Like how do I do this? How do I, like, it's just it's almost like a defense mechanism of how can I be comfortable in this situation. Yeah. And it goes away like after I get like the first laugh. I'm like, okay, autopilot, and I don't care anymore. But for that brief moment, like you're saying, like with introductions or meeting people, or even worse, like you meet people through friends, and then your friend walks away, and it's just you and them because he's got, when's the proper dismount for that?
Yeah. So what do you do? Is usually my go-to.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you. Yeah, people like talking about themselves. Yeah, that's a good best way to go about it.
That did not happen on my dates at all. And so that my girlfriend would tell you that all of our first dates were disasters, and she quantifies all of the dates that we had before, like I kissed her, as first dates that went badly.
At least she kept giving you chances. That's
And that's what I recognize is like, you know what, I don't want to see her with somebody else just because I wasn't bold enough to make a move. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And I just made a stand, and luckily it worked out, and it's continued to work out years later. But it is something that she's like, I was seething when you walked me to my car. I just was like, well, he obviously doesn't like me, and
yeah. What'd you do that was so bad? You made it seething? Seething's a bold statement there. That's anger.
Because I have some hang-ups, and we went on a date on a day where there's usually an open mic, and I normally am at open mic at all times, and I took her to a place to eat, and I'm like, okay, we're going to eat. We're going to go back. We got to go back. And I kept looking at my watch to see what time it was as the mic started. And and she's like, you didn't take your jacket off. You literally just look at your watch. We were ready to go the whole
time. Yeah. Okay. And you were definitely displaying that every second, which made it look on her side that you were disinterested in her.
Yes.
So the reality was you were just focused on the open mic.
I was focused on the open mic, and I didn't want to. I was afraid that I was going to hose it by saying something weird, and I was like, I don't want to be awkward. If I'm going to be awkward and lose this, let me lose it at open mic. Let me lose it there. If I'm going to blow it anywhere.
No, wait. Did you take her as a date to an open mic and perform?
No.
Okay. That's really bold. That could go either way.
Yeah, she wants to do stand up. She's done it a few times, and she's kind of. Okay. She has her own 13-year-old daughter to manage, and there's a lot of time constraints. Her dad, the daughter's dad lives way, in Idaho and stuff, so there is way more time commitment to daughter than you have.
Yeah,
like if your daughter had to fly, or then you wouldn't you don't get to see them that often, so
right.
There isn't like you want to have her this weekend. That requires plane tickets and stuff.
Yeah, that's a much harder thing to coordinate.
And so she definitely, and there's attachment there, and I'm like, I'm all for it. I'm like, whatever she wants to do. If she wants to spend time with you, she's saying, hey, I feel I'm not feeling well. I'd rather, I haven't talked to you in a while, or something like that. She gives her one of those cues of, I miss hanging out. Have a girl's day. Let's go. Let's go ahead and, take care of that. I'm not going to get bent out of shape. It's like, I was an only child too. I know how, and sometimes it gets lonely. So I would rather you make that time with her than me. I'm going to be here no matter what.
That's fair.
And so that's how.
Perfect way to put it.
And so yeah, but yeah, our dates were none too exciting to her and to her thing. And
Well, it's good you made a move. You made it happen.
yes, it is, and I'm thankful for that. And it's been great. And I'm just an easygoing impatient. Once I know what's going on, I'm like, yeah, whatever you need. I'm not gonna be Mr. Bossy Pants or get bent out of shape because I can't see you. I was like, I know you want to see me. I just know there are things that are preventing it.
Do you share the same fear that I do?
Yes, on some levels, yeah, I absolutely do. Like dates.
So for me, another place, because you were saying how comedy is kind of like you're showing your best self in a bad situation. I feel like another way that I use that is through social media, like Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It's another way to kind of have a facade of who I am, or put the best parts of me on display.
Yeah.
To be mixed.
See, I don't hesitate that much on social media. Sometimes if I post something and it gets like, oh, I can't handle this or something like that. Like somebody posts something that's too far. Okay, that might stick with me a little bit, but I don't really I don't consciously think about my posts like, oh my God, I hope that people.
I do. I do too much. I think way too much about, or not think too much, but I care too much about what strangers on the internet think about me.
Okay.
Yeah, I invest too much emotions and thought into that, but I think it all stems from the anxiety or fear of not being liked. It's hard to manage social media because it's because people are already disingenuous to begin with. So I'm like, I'm fighting an uphill battle here, trying to get people whose only goal is to upset me to like me.
Yeah, absolutely. I sometimes get sometimes argument posts or people that are trying to poke the bear. Like I'm able to tune them out, but it's like it takes a minute for me to either I'll type it out and then just go back and delete it before I post it.
Smart.
But I just try my best to not give in. Like my thought was don't give them the satisfaction of knowing they got me. I don't want them to know that I took that personally.
Yeah. I'd like to say it's gotten a lot better for me, but I think it's more just the subjects and tones of Facebook have changed since the election. I think that was a really divisive time, and I could easily allow myself to get involved.
But to me, it's only divisive because I think every media outlet now has access to news stories across the country. When I was a kid, because I'm 45, when I was a kid, we didn't have CNN. We didn't have the ability to see news in Lincoln, Nebraska, and here in Dallas, or where I grew up in Houston. You had Houston area news only. It was Houston news, and then for 30 minutes, Ted Koppel will tell you what's going on overseas at World News Tonight. And then you'd have your 10 o'clock local news, which was just a rerun of the 8 o'clock news with maybe any updates. But, then when, like, with all these news outlets that are 24/7, that people posting articles of all the time, just everybody is in a race to be the first person to publish this so they can get everybody's eyes first. Like, even, I'm a sports fan, so even, like, I've never seen a time where I've had so many sports stories come out that are inaccurate, but they've come out just because they don't want to sit on this and risk not being the first.
Yeah, that's very, very, our society is very much built around instant gratification now, which comes with having to be the first to say it and having to be the first to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, definitely it comes with some inaccuracies when you're in a race to share facts.
Yeah. And I think that comes with, I think a lot of, like, when I grew up in sports is coming up with, winning and losing, and that everybody now, like, in some of the kids' games, I get that certain age that that the score doesn't matter, and it's like, what does it matter if who wins and who loses if you just play? I get that part of it, but at the same time, as you get older, there has to be some spirit of competition, and it's like it doesn't have to be. It's not this detrimental keeping people down, but it's like we can have fun, but don't make losing like the worst thing to happen. Like when we were kids and stuff, you want kids to try, you want kids to bring their best, but you also don't want to reward them for just sitting on the bench. You want to reward them for pushing themselves outside of their comfort barriers, not just being there. And I feel sometimes I think those two things get, lost in the shuffle. Like it's either, you got the dad that's like, you don't want this, you don't, like the screaming in your face when they're, but I was like,
I feel like you learn that lesson of effort being put into something when you're actually passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a kid and your parents are interested in you being in sports, like for me, when I played baseball, I'd just like play in the grass or like try to talk to the other players. I wasn't paying attention to the game. For me, it was just a social activity that I got dressed up for. Like I got to wear a baseball costume to go talk to my friend.
But I mean, why not make it something affordable? Why not? Why do I have to spend $300 on baseball and then $300 on football? Why can't we invest in a community like that provides that stuff and just says, okay, it's this season. Do you want to play this? Okay. Next, just basically it's one sporting league, but we have all these different sports. And so kids can try out, and if they like something, okay, the next level up after that, okay, now we start to be more basketball. So if I like basketball and soccer, okay, this is more basketball and soccer focused.
That sounds like sports communism.
Well, I just think that would be so much more beneficial than let's spend $300
to choose.
Yeah,
like having kids choose what they want to do will have them more invested in it because they chose it. It wasn't chosen for them.
Yeah, and that's and I just feel like I feel like the leagues and stuff should do a better job of, hey, let's not just sign up for this, that, or the other thing. Let's sign up for this whole sports.
Yeah.
If they don't like any sports, hey, we got an arts. We had the same thing with arts.
Thing was like, if growing up, I had to play a sport and I had to play an instrument. And it didn't matter what the sport was, and it didn't matter what the instrument was, but they wanted me to do sports, to learn about teamwork and learn about physical body stuff like having to train. And then they wanted me to play sports to play an instrument because it's also practice. That is more of a personal practice than holding yourself accountable and more of a mental activity. And I think those things paired really well. And that's something I'm now passing on to my kids, that they need to play a sport and an instrument.
Yeah.
But it still gives them the choice to do.
Yeah. But I mean,
what they want.
I just think that would be so much more beneficial to kids is just to have like just a whole one place that you can go where you do arts. So it's not just, I think the more sequestered you are in certain things and you don't expose kids to them, that's where I think the bullying and all that stuff kind of generates from us. They're not exposed to that. It's like, what is this art? Yeah. What are you gay? They do all that stuff because they weren't exposed to it, and they're afraid of it because they were never exposed to it. So they don't know anything about it. And so before they can be their dominance can be poked at because they know nothing about art, they're going to affect the group by saying you don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Which is what I also told, Mallory and stuff, it's like, now it's, your daughter's getting into the age of social dynamics and to play to your strengths. Like people are going to tear down on things you like because they want people to like them. And so they're going to, it'll start with, I don't like this TV show. I think that was dumb. Okay. And as soon as if you like that show, what does it matter if you like that show? They're gonna poke fun at you for a day or two about liking that show. but I'd rather you like that show than to come to the group and say, yeah, that show's dumb, because then
Right, you're denying yourself.
that, and it starts taking little pieces. It's that little piece of you goes away. Then they start taking bigger pieces.
Oh yeah.
And
I do that with my daughter now. She's very much motivated by what is interesting. I mean, it's the same fear that I have. She has. It's the same thing. It's just, fear of not being liked. So she's liking things. And it's not to say she doesn't genuinely have an interest in it, but she'll put aside things that she would liked before that it's just not. It's not cool now.
yeah.
Okay.
But that to me also is what comedy is too. Is it's learning that I'm not cool, but embracing the things that I'm not cool about, that I'm not cool at.
You find out how many other people have that same exact feeling.
Yeah, and that's why I tried to tell. Is like when people say I wish I knew then what I know now, it's not like what stocks to invest in. It is that if I knew that I'd be much happy if I knew that being who I am wasn't such a a pariah or something that would just be insulted or humiliated on a daily basis, I'd have been a much happier kid. Like if I'd have known that it's not that big of a deal, and it's so hard because again, you don't get outside of that classroom.
I feel high school is when I kind of figured that out, but middle school was rough.
Yeah, and again, it's people, and they don't know better. They're human beings learning right alongside you that how can I, the whole goal was to just be the cool kid or to have everybody think you're cool. And it's such a small goal, and the bigger scheme of things. And it's like, why did I think that, that shirt was, they made fun of me for that shirt and stuff?
Yeah.
Why did I let them get to me? Because I used to have a MC Hammer Too Legit to Quit t-shirt. I may still have it somewhere, but it was just, I had it all the way up to my 20s, and it was just so funny.
Yeah. I don't have any of the clothes I had up into my 20s because I grew like 3 sizes since then. So if I kept them, they would not fit my arm.
Some of them I try to keep. Like I still have some that I try to keep, and it doesn't fit well and stuff.
Yeah, okay, fair, but you still got them. That's nice.
I feel like that they become a fitness goal. Like your parents that have like the bell bottoms and stuff. It's
oh yeah.
It's I just one day I'll fit back into these.
I don't have those disillusions, but one day I'll probably get a bigger shirt.
Do you think doing comedy has kind of helped you with that fear, though? Has being able to talk about yourself in a realistic tone?
Yeah. I think it's a really healthy way to do it. Because when I'm planning what I'm saying ahead of time, it's not reactionary. It's all planned out. It's calculated, and although it is a designed way to get people to like me. My material that I say about me, at least, not everything that I talk about is me, but when I do talk about me, it's real, it's genuine.
Yeah.
And I'm presenting myself how I see myself, and that, and people have related to that, and that's a great feeling.
Yeah. I think the hard part is just finding the things that make me laugh and the things that happen to me, and that to me was like the biggest, because I think my biggest struggle was I still wanted to be liked, and like you did, like that was my biggest struggle with stand-up is just I would try to not put myself in a bad light even on stage. Like I would be like, I didn't do, I would pull back on certain bits and stuff because I'm like, that's kind of sad. And I was like, I don't want people, I still want to try to feel like that I'm a cool, fun-loving person.
Right.
And so I feel like, the more I just had to basically admit, I'm not this great person. And you have to be like, and that's okay. It's okay to have flaws. And I think that, people saying, look at your big feet, things like that kids will do.
Yeah. Well, they're forgivable flaws.
Yeah.
For sure. Then there's some people that get up and they're just like outwardly racist, and you're like, people actually aren't going to connect with that flaw. You should,
Yeah.
you should probably change that personally.
Yeah, it's definitely but it's owning certain parts of yourself and being able to admit, yeah, I messed up, rather than to double down, they're wrong. I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like stand-up comedy allows you to make peace with with certain things that happened to you in the past that you can joke about.
Yeah, give you some solid humility.
Well, Chase, I thank you for doing this. Where can people find you on social media?
So I run River Valley Comics with my friend Sam Price, another comic. Check out River Valley Comics on Facebook or Instagram. And then my name is Chase Myska, Myska, and you can follow me on all the medias.
Okay. Well, I'll let you get out of your daughter's closet.
Thank you. I'm coming out.
All right. Thanks again, Chase. So that was Chase. It's amazing how much of our fears and stuff just are deeply rooted in that early school time in our lives. Just impressionable, vulnerable, and everything is life or death. It feels like every social stake is higher when you're in middle school. Some people find their groove later on, either in high school or after high school, or in my case, even in your 40s. I mean, sometimes you just have a long time before you get acceptance, and it just feels like the quicker you can find that acceptance, the better off you'll be. Check out Chase Myska at Chase Myska on all social media platforms. He's just now starting to find his stride, and so it's definitely worth checking out. If you want to check me out, I'm at Ryan Perio. I don't have any shows coming up on the calendar just yet, but I shall have some fairly soon. We'll have some more shows to promote as well. Thanks again for listening. If you like what you hear, leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, 5 stars if you can. If you have any feedback for the show, email me at somefearfans@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Last week, I spent a little bit of this time last week. We were just getting to Ozark, Arkansas. We had a great time just hiking and getting away from everything for a couple of days. Had a scenic drive back on Tuesday with a quick stop in Paris, Texas, before me and Mallory got back to our normal daily lives. So definitely some more episodes on the horizon. I just booked 2 interviews for next week, so hopefully we'll have more interviews in the can. I've still got a couple that I haven't released that I'm going to release in the next couple of weeks. And looking to get some more and get some rhythm, so I have a little bit of a stockpile. Not a lot, but a little. Thanks again for listening, and have a wonderful week. And now some thank yous for the folks that make this show possible. Thanks to Barry Whitewater for my art and graphics. You can follow him on Instagram at bwhiteh2o. Get it? H2O like water. You can also follow him on Facebook, Music. A huge thank you to Gunnar Olsen for the wonderful music provided for this podcast. You can follow him on Instagram at gunbuns, that's GUNBUNS, as well as his website, gunnarolsen.net. Check out some of the samples that he has recorded. They're amazing. He's an amazing percussionist. If you want to follow the show, we've got a Facebook group, Some of All Fears. Instagram, Twitter, you can find us at Some Fear Fans. If you have some feedback for the show, email me at somefearfans, SOMEFEARFANS @gmail.com. I'll be happy to take those into consideration. Also, if you'd like to be a guest, email me at somefearfans@gmail.com. We can try to iron out some details and get that settled in. Give us some feedback on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a review. It makes the show bigger, and it's not going anywhere. I'm going to record as many shows as I possibly can. If you want to follow me on social media, I am at Ryan Perio. It's RyanPerrio on all social media platforms. You can follow me there. And you can check me out at ryanperio.com, my website. I'll try to list upcoming shows there as well. It's been kind of spotty because as soon as I set it up, that's when the pandemic happened. And everything's kind of just in a holding pattern. Thanks again for listening to the Sum of All Fears podcast. Next week, we'll have another guest with another fear. Thanks for listening.